Good morning, guys. Welcome to the Hobby Room channel. Thank you guys for tuning in for yet another episode. Gorgeous morning here in South Florida. Got our wake up juice. No name brand, of course. Since I always forget to do at the end of the episode, I'm going to ask you now, guys, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. It costs you nothing to sign up for YouTube. And if you do those things and you subscribe, it keeps all of us YouTubers relevant. And it keeps our information at the forefront and really goes a long way to us pathetic souls who are going to attempt to make a couple dollars at doing this. So, as promised, we're getting into model airplanes, the absolute core of my passion for the radio-controlled hobby, the thing that I love the most. Most of you guys know that the giant warbirds are my thing, but lately have been branching out into the old-timers, the polyhedrals. And for those of you who don't know what that is, a dihedral wing as viewed from the front, the wing panels go like this. Polyhedral comes out, then takes yet another step and goes up. It's an old-timer thing. So getting into these old polyhedral airplanes, oftentimes are originally designed for free flight, but the builds on them are exquisite. These are from back in the days when builders built. They weren't unboxing ARFs. Not that there's anything wrong with that. They have their place, but I've got a little soft spot for these things. So what are we going to cover today? Guys, this plane, I have had my eye on this plane for, best as I can figure, about 15 years. This was built by a gentleman called Fred, a member of the Palm Beach Radio Control Association, who unfortunately is no longer with us. Due to that, I was actually able to purchase this airplane from his widow, and I'm truly honored to have it. And we are going to do a faithful restoration of the plane. We're going to keep it in vaguely his trim scheme, just to kind of, as an homage to him, you know, to kind of keep it, the heritage of the airplane alive. So, real quick, what's this video about? This video is, what do you do when you pull an airplane off the roof of a hobby shop that's been there for 15 years, and you're going to set off on the task of making it an every weekend flyer? Well, that's quite a task. One school of thought says rip all the covering out, rip all the servos out, throw all the electronics in the trash, and start afresh. And if that is your thought, then you have the correct thought, because that is actually the right way to ensure that these models live on. What we are going to do, and by we I mean myself and Bub Scott, is we're going to do a soft restoration first, a sympathetic restoration, and then a proof flight. So I'll get into that. So first order of business is we had to cut open a hatch on this side, as all the electronics were built into this airplane. And this was oftentimes the way it was done back in the day. The servos were put in, the receiver was put in, the battery pack was put in, and then the final woodwork was done, then it was covered, and that's it. There was no accessing it. So we cut an access hatch, which gained us the ability to get at this stuff. Not this stuff, this stuff. So what do you do when you start pulling these things out? Well, the first thing you do is you take your your battery pack here, and you throw it in the trash can, because that's where that belongs. And then we had an engine mount that kind of sort of fit the engine, did a pretty good job, but right in the trash can. That's where that goes. Then we had a 2-ounce tank, which, you know, again, I'm going to remind you guys that these were free flight models. These models were meant to be start up, hand launched. They would climb under power until they ran out of fuel. and then glide, and then just free fly. And they had what was called a Dethermalizer, which was often fused, but we'll get into all of that. And that's what would bring the model down. So we've got our original tank with the clunk and the line and the stopper. Yep, you guessed it. That's where that belongs. Now, as I don't like throwing everything away, I was able to pull out of here an Interceptor 2000B 8-channel FM receiver. And I'm going to come on, I'm going to hold it up close to the camera for a second. There we have that. I can only assume that this works. And I will say that if any of you lot out there have any desire to own this, I will happily send it to you at no cost, so long as you pay the postage. I will send that to you. You can have it. It's got no place in my little collection. So what are we going to do? We are going to do what's basically called a proof flight. We're going to leave the servos temporarily that are in the airplane as we did hook up a servo tester and we're able to prove that they function. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a new receiver in this, fly it on 72, a new battery pack, excuse me, I have to cough, a new battery pack, and a new tank, and we're going to fly the model. We're going to fly it once, maybe twice, just to prove that it is all built square, flies the way it ought to fly. Like I said, a proof flight. If that works out, we are then going to strip the model down, sand it, make a couple small repairs, recover it, and send it home, so to speak, do an all-the-way rebuild on it, such that the model has another, 20 plus years of service on it. Like I said, I've known this model to be hanging in the exact same spot for at least 15 years. I don't know what year the model was built, but safe to say it's got some age on it. So we know that we're going to temporarily use the servos. The covering is about as brittle as you can imagine. Anywhere you touch it, your finger goes through it. But again, that's to be determined later. That left us with the engine. Now, a lot of you guys know I'm an engine guy, so this is very much my cup of tea. And I want to show you guys, everybody out there has their ideas on cleaning tips and tricks. And I'm not here to debunk or discredit anybody's method of doing this. I'm simply going to show you what works for me. It's probably so easy that it's going to agitate you. So let me just real quick show you the finished engine that came out of this model. And there's our exhaust, carburetor, all cleaned up. And it even had a little spacer ring to space that muffler a little further off the cowl. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying I own media tumblers. I own walnut shakers. I own ultrasonics. I've used glycol. I've used transmission fluid. I've done what I'm sure a bunch of you guys have done, which is to put a harsh cleaner in the ultrasonic with hot water just to have your engines come out gray in color. I've destroyed as much as I've made beautiful in the process of sorting out how to get engines to come out looking like this. And what I've come up with will probably agitate you guys just due to how simple it is. Ready for it? It's a little sun faded because of where it sits in my hobby room, but this is toothpaste. For those of you who don't know, you should. This is a toothbrush. Okay, you could buy these at the dollar store in a pack of like 5 of them for $1. And then I have a relatively stiff bristle dishes brush. That's it. No washing up liquid, no dish soap, nothing toxic, nothing acidic. Not even if you introduce an alkaline, it just all serves to destroy the aluminum. So just yesterday, this engine sitting up in there was just the ugliest of the ugly. And what I ended up doing is I actually take my tablet. This one has shut off like it always does because it's an Android, and I'm not an Android fan, and I think it knows that I'm not an Android fan, so it decides to shut itself off. But I quite literally take my tablet, I set it in front of the sink, just like so. I put on my favorite YouTube channel, whether it be Kevin Talbot or Glenn Barclay or Gavin Evans or whoever it may be, and I take my toothpaste and I smoosh it on in there, and I just do this. And I do this for probably the better part of an hour. And I go the direction of the cooling fins. When I need to get into little bits, I do like yay. And quite literally with these 3 items, and let's call it a total of investment of, okay, we've got 5 of these for $1. You could probably pick this up for $2.50. Let's say this costs you $2.50. So you've got $5 there, $6, so well under $10. You have everything you need to do this. The one luxury I do use is once I get done with the scrub up, and I use cold water. Don't even use hot water. Just use cold water to rinse everything off. One thing I do after the fact is I do drop it in my ultrasonic with, once again, guys, cold water. Not because I expect the ultrasonic to clean anything past what I've already done, but simply I want to get all the soap out of all the nooks and crannies. So I run it through the ultrasonic. I then take all this lot downstairs to my workshop where I have compressed air. I blow out, the crankcase area, all the bolt holes, get around everything, blow everything out, and then I use a little bit of my Boca Bearing high-speed bearing oil. And in fact, I'll go grab it if you'll excuse me for 1 second. Here we are. I grab my trusty Boca Bearing high-speed bearing oil, which I like because it's got this metal applicator. And I quite simply go through and I do all the bushings. I do a drop down the carburetor base. I drop some down onto the top of the piston, the wrist pin, and I just go around it and I spin it and I spin it and I spin it. And then I set it in a tin full of paper towel to soak up all the surplus oil, and that's it. That's the entire process to getting an engine to look that way. I'll throw a fresh plug at it, I'll cut some new gaskets for it, and away we go. So, going back to the original point and purpose of this video, I'm going to knock this engine together. We're going to put fresh receiver, fresh batteries in this airplane and go take it for a flight. If it flies well, we're going to pull all that lot apart, pull the covering off, I don't even think there's any wood repair, but we'll do a little bit of any repairs that we find that are necessary. Guys, I cannot wait to review this airplane with you, to go over it with you. This thing has got an under-cambered wing. This thing has got a lifting tail, which means it's an under-cambered tail with half ribs. A lot of you guys might know what that means, but that means that between every full rib, there's a half rib that goes from the leading edge to the spar. It's an absolute thing of beauty. So join us on our little adventure as we bring this back to life. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned it. I may have. This is a Carl Goldberg SailPlane circa 1940. Now, I don't know what year this one was built, but the Goldberg SailPlane is a 1940 vintage airplane. So we are really going back, guys, to long before you had 2.4, long before you had this. This original would have been a free flight. It would have flown on escapements with dethermalizers. And I know I'm probably speaking a completely separate language to some of you lot, but we're going to turn it into one very cool RC. So follow along on the journey. Guys, thank you for stopping into the hobby room. This hasn't timed out yet, so I'll say it again. Subscribe, like, hit the notification bell. Thank you for stopping into the hobby room. Go do something RC. Over and above all else, enjoy your day.